Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Retalk Uzbekistan webinar. My name is Jay, producer of Green Energy Future Central Asia. Today, we will talk about the Uzbekistan solar and wind energy market and towards renewable energy excellence in Uzbekistan, hosted by Leader Associates. Retalk Uzbekistan is the online webinar to bring you more Central Asia-focused business contents during COVID-19 outbreak, complementing the physical gathering of Green Energy Future Central Asia. Please kindly find the agenda of today's webinar on this slide. Our respectable speakers are Mr. Bernard, Principal Investment Officer from International Finance Corporation, and Ms. Veronica, Senior Banker, Regional Head Energy from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Every presenter's presentation includes 25-minute speech and 5-minute Q&A session. Before we start, to help audience engage in the session and interact with our speakers better, I have a few housekeeping items to remind in advance. First of all, sound issue. If you can hear me now, you are doing just fine with the audio. But if at any time during the presentation, you have sound problems, you can switch over to the telephone mode. As you can see at the bottom of your control panel, there is a chat box option. We have already kept the dial-in number inside it. While the webinar and participant ID person by person, please kindly check the email notification and call in with your own ID. Second of all, interactive Q&A. During the presentation, the audience microphone will be muted to avoid having background noises. For questions directed to our presenters, there is a Q&A box for your usage. We will go through the questions at the end of each presentation. One important note is that please do not add further questions once the Q&A session starts, as we hope to create a more comfortable environment for presenters to address the pre-asked questions, instead of being interrupted by constantly messengers. In the meantime, our team at Leader Associates will help out in address some of your questions in the case that we do not respond to your question promptly. It means the question has been passed over to speakers for independent address. At last, material issues. Today's webinar recordings will be shared with all of you by email within next week and will be posted on Green Energy Future Central Asia website, as well as social media channels at the same time. Okay, last slide for my presentation is who we are at Leader Associates and what we do. Leader Associates is an international green energy event organizer. We are going to host our Green Energy Future Central Asia event on September 28 to 29 in Tashkent, and would like to take the opportunity to stay in connect with all industry peers. And now, without further ado, let's start with our first presenter of today, Mr. Bernard from International Finance Corporation, who is leading and assisting IFC teams globally to develop and execute mandates assigned by governments to IFC.
Thank you very much, Jay. Hi, it's Bernard Atlan from IFC. So I'm going to run you through briefly the solar energy market in Uzbekistan, but mostly within the context of the power generation mix and the energy reforms which are occurring in Uzbekistan. So if you can go to the first slide. I mean, we need to understand the very specific context in Uzbekistan regarding the energy market. Uzbekistan has vast natural gas, natural resources, and the power generation sector is really dominated by gas power plants, thermal power plants. They currently have roughly 12.5 gigawatt of installed capacity, And 90% of the current capacity is derived from the use of gas. So those are gas power plants. It's also a very concentrated sector geographically because you have 3 main power plants within the country. IFC is currently involved in mandates to attract private sector for development of some of those power plants and also the disposal of some of those assets. Next slide, please. The issue is that it's a sector, the power generation sector in Uzbekistan is in a great need of modernization. Those power plants are pretty old. As you can read on the slide, 75% of these assets are 30 years old and more. And therefore you have an average very low efficiency, which there is an average of 22% efficiency. And this is due to the fact that those old assets mostly date back from the Soviet era. So there is the government has a challenge in front of it. It needs to, at the same time, it needs to increase the power production, and it needs to compensate for the loss of available capacity because of the aging of the assets, while making sure that it can increase the production to meet the growing demand. There is also an opportunity cost in the sense that the gas which is being produced in Uzbekistan and which is being used in inefficient power plants is gas that cannot be exported. So there is an opportunity cost that actually is derived from the low efficiency. And that's what the government needs to address as well. There is also an issue of ensuring a reliable baseload, which is a bit of a challenge when you have aging assets, such as a current park of assets in Uzbekistan. Next slide. And therefore there are very significant investment opportunities in Uzbekistan in the power sector. There is a current need to expand the power generation sector and to change the energy mix. And the main opportunities in this sector are obviously the rehabilitation of the existing power units, the decommissioning of the power units which cannot be modernized. There are investments needed in the development of new CCGTs, and what is the subject of this discussion is also the huge opportunities in terms of development of renewable energy. And the current plan of the government is to develop by 2030 5 gigawatts of PV and 3 gigawatts of wind, approximately. So those are the three pillars of the expansion of the reform of the power generation sector in Uzbekistan. So next slide. So obviously there are certain sector constraints for the introduction of all this renewable energy and the change in the energy mix. Obviously there is a need for modernization and development of the grid and the distribution system. And the World Bank has currently a $300 million program to address the investments needed in the power transmission sector. In parallel, the government also has embarked on very ambitious reforms aimed at achieving cost reflectiveness, changing the tariff structure, building up the institutional capacity in the energy sector, and also to start addressing issues which are related to the market model and regulation and governance. So the overall outlook for the increase in power generation. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there is roughly 12.5 gigawatt of installed capacity. There is a least cost plan which is kind of guiding the government efforts in the implementation of the power reforms at the moment, there is an estimated need for another 15 gigawatt of installed capacity, which translates into significant amount of investment. But what is important is that the capacity mix, which is planned for 2030, does include roughly 5 gigawatt of PV, which is going to represent roughly 20% of the overall installed capacity. So this is pretty significant, and this will translate into a foreseen rapid implementation and development of solar parks. So what is the strategic relevance for solar energy in particular within this context of complete shift in the energy mix in Uzbekistan and within the context of the need to increase power generation? Well, so it's not a secret that Uzbekistan has one of the best solar resources available in Central Asia. If you look at the map, as a specialized map, you would see that in the center and west of the countries, there are significant levels of irradiation, which provides good potential for development of PV parks. And those are in areas which are not, which are scarcely populated, where you don't really have extensive agriculture and population centers. So they are fit for development of solar parks. Unfortunately, those areas are a bit disconnected from the bigger demand centers. And therefore, this is why it's important to ensure that the grid system is being built up and refurbished at the same time as the development of intermittent energy. So there is solar resources available in Uzbekistan. The rationale also for developing the solar energy is, as I mentioned, the need to diversify the sources of power generation, and especially not only to move away from the gas dependency because of the fact that gas reserves are being depleted, but also to ensure that the country does not continue to suffer from the lack of this opportunity cost, and actually has the ability to start exporting higher volume of gas, especially to Russia. There is also, within the geopolitical context, there is a need also for and a strategy to ensure that the issue of security of supply is properly tackled. There are also some very specific issues related to blackouts in certain part of the countries, and the whole plan for the rollout of the new power generation and the mix is also supposed to address those kind of issues. And last, the recent the fall in the prices of solar panel has now made solar energy a low-cost power of generation within the context of where there is actually good irradiation data, and you don't have an issue and when you have scarcity of population, which would enable the country to actually implement and develop solar park on a wide scale. So that's the other slide, but the other way around. It's next slide and next one. Yes, this one. So as I mentioned, the government strategy is to have developed 5 gigawatt of PV power by 2030. So how do they intend to do that? So the current plan is for there is an aggressive plan to develop solar parks with capacities in excess of 100 megawatt throughout the country. Those solar parks are to be financed by private partners exclusively under PPP models. The current modus operandi for the development of the solar parks is to be done under the investment law with a PPP model with a 25 years PPA price. The strategy for the smaller parks, those which are less than 20 megawatt, it's being developed, but it's foreseen that it's going to be mainly to support specific areas and specific industrial parks, and to be linked with specific industrial parks. There is also a strategy and incentives to be developed to roll out the extensive use of residential PV. There is an aggressive target to have addressed 4% of the total residential demand through individual PV. In terms of location, as I mentioned, the PV parks are going to be developed primarily in the central and southern part of the country. Just because if you look at the irradiation data, this is where it makes the most sense, and this is where you also have a scarcity of a population.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, Mr. Bernard, which is really informative and educational for us to have a clear picture of Uzbekistan solar energy market. Besides the presentation, here we have some questions from the audience collected from the registration. You can see the questions on our slides.
So what I didn't mention is that there are current plans for the development of solar parks. So IFC has been mandated to develop, to assist the government and to develop 1 gigawatt of solar parks. We have completed a first project, which is a pilot project in the Navoi region, 100 megawatt, which has been structured under the IFC Scaling Solar template, which is a deal structure that is being used in other parts of the world as well. There is currently, we currently have another project for 2 times 200 megawatt, and this is to address the first question. And this is going to be in Samarkand and Jizak. I know that there is also an ADB project for, I think, 200 megawatt, 100 or 200, I don't recall, in Sherabad. So the IFC project for the 2 times 200 megawatt has been launched. The pre-qualification has been, the pre-qualification process has been launched. There is a deadline for investors to be pre-qualified and to send a request for pre-qualification. And the deadline is 26th of September. Following this, there will be time for the investors to prepare their bids based on the tender documentation that will be shared with investors who have been pre-qualified. Now the timing is a bit uncertain because of the COVID-19 situation and the travel restrictions. So depending on the travel restrictions have and may continue to impact the work of technical consultants and the ability of investors to perform their necessary due diligences. So that's the update on the current projects. So those are the projects in solar. Then there will be, which have started. Then there will be another solar project also led by IFC, which is going to be for 500 megawatts in 2 or 3 lots that will probably be launched in fall. But the specificity of this one is that maybe 1 or 2 sites, probably 1, may be linked with a requirement to provide short duration battery energy storage. So this is a discussion that is being held, but this is going to be most probably the next phase of the rollout of the solar program. I think, Jay, you had some specific questions that you wanted to ask also.
Yes. Thank you so much. Besides, we found one really good question from the audience in the Q&A box. The question is, what guarantees packages are offered by the government for this project? Could you give us a short answer for this question?
So in the case of the first project, which has been completed now, 100 megawatt PV park in Navoi, which has been won by Masdar. And in the case, and most probably in the case of the second round, which is a 2 times 200 megawatts that I just mentioned in Samarkand and Chizak, it is foreseen that the guarantee of the government will be in the form of a liquidity account to pay for the electricity produced, and it's essentially a government-backed project. It is foreseen also that the World Bank may be in a position to extend a guarantee, but that will be at the request of investors. So it's not imposed into the package. It's probably going to be a possibility that the bidders will have to buy a guarantee from the World Bank that will backstop the obligations of the government. So it's a AAA type of guarantee that will back the sovereign guarantee given by the government.
Thanks, Bernard. Could you please give a short response for another question? The question is, what is the schedule plan for your tender?
So the current tender is the one that I mentioned, which is a 2 times 200 megawatt in Samarkand and Chizak, with the pre-qualification process has been launched with a deadline of 26th of September. I would foresee that the tender documents to be available sometime in October, November, and then normally it should take a couple of months, 3 months to prepare the tender. But we will reassess the timeline based on the ability of the investors to actually physically come to Uzbekistan and have the ability to perform their due diligence. The third phase will be launched afterwards, the 500 megawatt.
Thank you so much for answering the questions and all your contribution to this. And if you have time, you can also interact with the audience and type to answer the question in the Q&A box. Now, let's welcome our next presenter, Ms. Veronica from EBRD. Ms. Veronica, could you please share your screen?
Yes, thank you, Jay.
Yes, so you can share your screen now.
So thank you, Jay, for the introduction, and thank you, Bernard, for the very interesting presentation on solar development. I'm here today to speak about EBRD's perspective on expediting wind energy development in Uzbekistan. I would like to, in the first place, have a look into the operational approach. Our operational approach is based on 3 pillars: policy dialogue, technical cooperation, and investment. As part of policy dialogue, we support promoting sustainable energy, honest broker role, and sharing experience and best practice. Technical cooperation refers to our support with regards to PPA drafting, grid absorption studies, and strengthening of regulatory frameworks. Investment covers a number of investment products that we can offer. This include equity, mezzanine, project finance loans, corporate loans, and others. I would like then to have a look into EBRD investments in renewables in Central Asia. So we cover almost all countries in Central Asia. The EBRD is a pioneer in supporting sustainable energy projects in this region. Through investments, we aim to support sector reforms that increase competition and liberalization of the market, strengthen frameworks for regionalization and energy security, and prioritize energy efficiency. As a next step, I would like to look into what is the regional potential. This this outline would specifically be very relevant for Uzbekistan and including for the wind development in Uzbekistan. So as a starting point and a very good grounds for the further development, these are exceptional resource potential, strong but pragmatic political will, strong population growth, and existing or developing legal frameworks and support mechanisms. Opportunities are attracting reputable foreign and local investors, attracting know-how and the best available technology on the market, steep cost reduction of solar technologies, carbon footprint and emission reductions, and supply of carbon credit. Challenges refer to intermittent and predictable nature of wind and solar power, seasonality of hydro, impact of large power volumes interfering with system stability because of priority of dispatch, poor diversification of power sector balance. Uzbekistan wind development currently benefits from all good starting points and from all opportunities. And because the wind power is in the very beginning of its development, it is at this stage far from facing challenges related from impact of large power volumes of intermittent renewable capacity. I would like next to highlight our investments. So in 2014-2019, we supported 18 renewable energy projects in the region, which means around 1 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity with $700 million US dollars of EBRD investments. Our investments have ranged from solar to wind to hydro. So in Kazakhstan, we supported solar and hydro power projects. In Mongolia, we supported solar and wind power projects. And in Tajikistan, we supported hydropower projects. Kazakhstan has started the development of renewable energy potential earlier than Uzbekistan did it, but Uzbekistan is gaining scale with a very high speed. So by the success of Kazakhstan, we can see and predict the very good future of development of renewables in Uzbekistan. I would like to go next to say a few words on the power sector of Uzbekistan in the context of wind development. So as Bernard highlighted, the sector is mostly thermal power dominated, and it has also a portion of hydropower capacity. You can see that the generation volumes have been growing steadily in the last years, and this underpins a very good potential for further investments into power sector generation capacity, including renewables. The government announced a 10-year program to build 5 gigawatt of solar power capacity and 3 gigawatt of wind power capacity by 2030. Accelerated development of renewable energy is required to diversify the generation mix, optimize the cost of power, and meet clean energy targets. Government has recently implemented critical energy reforms, including the unbundling of Uzbekenergo and tariff reform with the aim of cost recovery in the sector. Last year, EPPP law was adopted. All of these reforms are very important preconditions for the good development of renewable energy sector going forward. The announcements of massive plans to develop wind energy, 3 gigawatt of wind power by 2030, should help attract investments in Uzbekistan, because investors can be assured that it is not the only wind project that the government has launched right now. There is a pipeline, a very good pipeline of wind projects going forward that investors can target, and it would really help the development of the sector, these commitments. So I would like next to highlight what has been our recent contribution to the development of the energy sector. In 2018-2019, we signed 362 million euros investments for the construction of priority transmission and generation infrastructure in Uzbekistan. We also signed 2 MOUs on strategic cooperation in the power sector and on the development of wind energy potential in Uzbekistan. We work in very close cooperation and coordination with other MDBs and support development of renewables in line with our green economy transition mandate. We also provide assistance addressing climate change threats and carbon intensity issues to make sector more sustainable. This is particularly important for Uzbekistan because of the current power sector generation mix and the need to make it more sustainable in the future. We also implement a number of policy dialogue activities. These include a roadmap for attracting investment in the power sector through corporate and structural reform, engagements regarding tariff affordability, and engagements on the climate and carbon side of the power sector and renewables. It is very important to focus not on the broader set of reform as Uzbekistan is currently doing. And that's why we support a diverse policy dialogue activities and not only focus on wind energy support that we currently provide. So a number of support policy dialogue activities have been accomplished, a number are ongoing. So among the ones that were accomplished, I can name the tariff study on affordability and design of mitigation measures for vulnerable consumers' protection. This is something that we implemented together with the Council of European Energy Regulators. We also supported unbundling of Uzbekenergo that happened last year and was a very important precondition for the development of renewable energy sector. We also support a roadmap for attracting investment through corporate and structural reform, analysis of the single buyer function, because as I said, development of renewables should not be seen outside of the sector context. And we also supported corporate governance in power companies. Ongoing are a new electricity law, which is targeted at improving investment clients, our ongoing support to the implementation of the first wind auction, a review of the renewables law, low carbon roadmap for the power sector, and power sector climate resilience study for Uzbekistan. So what are success factors and outlook for Uzbekistan, and particularly for the wind development? So important milestones on which our activities are based refer to policy dialogue, our strong presence on the ground. We have a big office in Tashkent, public sector investments in energy, and of course, strong interest from private sector that we very much welcome. So looking forward, the bank is supporting the first turnkey energy auction for a wind farm in Karkar, Pakistan region. And the forthcoming targets refer to Uzbekistan planning to auction 1 gigawatt wind projects with the support of the bank. So what is the current situation with the wind auction? Uzbekistan has launched the first wind auction this year. This auction is at the expressions of interest stage. It has recently been completed. So as part of our support, we provide technical cooperation assistance. This refers to assistance with site selection, environmental assessment, auction design, and implementation support. The framework for the auction includes a power purchase agreement with the National Electric Grid Company of Uzbekistan, and a government support agreement with the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade as a signatory on behalf of the government of Uzbekistan. The first auction is very successful. 70 companies expressed interest to participate, following an invitation to submit expressions of interest. EBRD will also be glad to consider financing for this project and to offer our products to the interested bidders. This concludes my keynote presentation, and I can now proceed, Jay, if I should, to the questions that were previously submitted. Shall I?
Hello, Veronica.
Yes, Jay.
Yes. So first, you can answer the 4 questions previously I sent you.
Very good. Very good. I will do. So the first question was, what is the foreseen role of the nationwide energy efficiency programs, and including in maximizing the financial and technical impact of large renewable energy projects, and electricity storage? What are the possibilities and perspectives? So I would like to start with answering a question on energy storage. Energy storage is a mature and proven technology to provide a number of grid services, from short-term frequency voltage support to guarantee the stability of the grid, to multi-hour, if not even seasonal storage to improve the overall efficiency of the energy system. This becomes fundamental when the share of variable renewable energy sources reaches and surpasses 20 to 30%. When the likelihood of periods of overproduction from wind and solar starts to become real. Storage offers the opportunity not to lose this excess electricity and reuse it when needed. Such storage is easily applicable to any sort of power generation, including wind. It is a bit premature to start actively working on storage in Uzbekistan, as the share of variable renewable energy sources is still small, and it will take some time to reach the point where the above overcapacity or where the impact of intermittency on the grid stability require to consider storage and other alternatives to improve the systems. In the long term, with Uzbekistan decarbonizing its energy sector with more and more variable renewable energy sources, storage will become a mainstream technology to enable reaching full decarbonization. Storage doesn't mean batteries only. There is the transitional pumped hydropower. There is also the emerging opportunity of using hydrogen, green hydrogen, as a storage solution. Answering a question on energy efficiency. Financial and technical viability of renewable energy projects, among other issues, would depend very much on the type of energy efficiency projects. Demand-side energy efficiency measures do contribute to the overall decarbonization of the energy sector as they reduce overall demand, and disproportionately, because 1 kilowatt hour saved on the demand side means a higher saving on the supply side due to transmission and distribution and other losses. We support such projects through providing direct loans for energy efficiency projects in a wide range of sectors and providing dedicated credit lines to local partner banks for lending for small energy efficiency and small-scale renewable energy projects. Then there were a number of questions related to wind tenders that you can see on your screens. So the first question that I want to address is based on the market teaser, we understand that the coming 100 megawatt wind project is to be implemented as PPP project. So the question refers to the documents which will be considered as PPP agreements for the purposes of the PPP law. Indeed, the PPA between State Power Transmission Company National Electric Networks of Uzbekistan and the project company and the Green Government Support Agreement between the government and the project company are envisaged as part of the structure. The government will be represented by Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade. This is outlined in the market teaser, and authorities in charge of the wind tender should be contacted for further details. A full overview of the agreements, including the components of the PPP agreement, will be provided in the RFQ and RFP documents. The next question is on how the wind energy tenders in Uzbekistan will be conducted, what is the timeline, what will be provided to the tenders, and when is the second phase of the wind auctions in Karakol, Pakistan. For the details on the timeline of the tender process, an indicative timeline has been provided to the project teaser, published as part of the expression of interest request. The authorities are currently finalizing decisions that will lead to the publication of the issuance of the RFQ. Pre-qualified bidders will be selected and announced 2 months after the release of the RFQ, and the RFP will be launched a month afterwards. A pre-bid conference will be held during the RFP stage. Key project documents, including PPA, GSA, and land lease agreements, will be included in the RFP. The deadline for submission of bids is expected to be set in first quarter of 2021. The second phase of wind auctions is expected at the end of 2021, but this is subject to the further discussions with the authorities. This concludes the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks for your presentation. It indeed reveals the detailed wind market and future plan. So there still has a little bit time. Would you mind answering one more question from the Q&A box?
Right, indeed. Which one would you like me to answer?
Yes, the question is, what is the EBRD's view on the logistic challenges with turbine delivery to the country?
This is a very good question because obviously Uzbekistan is a double landlocked country. I can say that these questions were reviewed as part of the preparation for the wind auction. This is the first project, the first wind auction, so we are yet to test how it will all go. However, it is to be noted that EBRD has financed quite a number of wind projects worldwide, including in remote places, such as, for instance, Mongolia, relatively remote as well. So developers, we trust the developers, experienced developers who will be able to implement the logistics in the best way, given their experience.
Appreciate your detailed answer. Thank you so much, Veronica. Hello, everyone. I think we have learned a lot from the webinar. Many thanks for our two respectable speakers' presentations. At last, I would like to remind you of upcoming exhibition and conference, Green Energy Future Central Asia, on September 28 to 29 in Tashkent. This event will gather a full industry chain to discuss the planning roadmap, development of solar wind energy, as well as the future tenders that shapes the country's renewable plan. Please do contact us if you have any question about our event. We will support you always. As the last of the last, recordings will be shared by email link within next week. Thanks again for our speakers. See you next time.